we're Team Mills. They say teamwork makes the dream work, and we're here to tell you they were right.
I'm John, the dreamer and logistics.
I'm Megan, the caution and the creative. Together, we've spent the last 10 years raising babies and building multiple businesses from the ground up. One thing we know to be true, we couldn't have done it without each other. From late nights to early mornings, failures and successes, and the unbelievable joy of seeing our dreams come to life, we live and breathe entrepreneurship, and we know firsthand just how much work it takes.
But we're not only business partners, we've been married for 10 years and have 4 beautiful kids who we homeschool in East Tennessee. We want to instill these life skills and values in our children and do life alongside them. We believe life is better as a team in every area. No one can do it alone. So our hope in this podcast is to walk alongside you, encourage you, and maybe teach you a thing or two about running a business and just life in general.
So let's get to work and learn something new. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey guys.
We are excited today. We have an episode that was a very frequently asked question over on Instagram. Lots of people have been asking about more marriage information.
Is that because we just had our 10-year?
Maybe. I don't know. Or maybe, I don't know why people want to know.
I don't either.
But we're going to share.
Yep. Our goods and our bads.
I asked on Instagram what people wanted to hear more topics about on the podcast. And the 2 biggest ones were homeschool and marriage. And we did an episode on homeschool 2 weeks ago. So you can feel free to go check that out in episode 3. That is live on the podcast and YouTube as well. But we decided today we would dive into more of a marriage-based topic, how we keep Christ at the center of our marriage, how we, try to keep the spice alive and all of the fun things. But before we do that, we need to take a minute to do our community spotlight as always. And today I'm shouting out Stephanie Thronberg. Now, Stephanie has been a sweet follower for quite some time. She bought makeup, Senegence makeup from me for her daughter's cheerleading competitions because it would stay on for cheer. And she may have been around before that. Honestly, I cannot remember, but she has been in our corner ever since. And I know her name, whenever it was coming through, I'd recognize it all the time. And then one day she showed up at the cookie crate and I flipped out when she said who she was. I'm pretty sure I just jumped into her arms. So I was so excited that she traveled from North Carolina to come visit us.
Yeah, and it was really cool. So she was with her daughter and her husband. Mm-hmm. And then we have kind of similar things. He has a transmission shop, so we were able to talk car parts and stuff. So it was a good time.
So fun. It was a great visit. So Stephanie, thank you so much for all of your kindness and encouragement on Instagram. And I'm so excited that you are officially a real life friend who I've gotten to hug in person. Okay, so let's jump into today's episode and just sharing kind of more about our marriage in terms of ways that we have tangibly felt like we've done things that have helped our marriage stay strong and Christ-centered. We're going to do more of a bullet point type list today where we share specific things that we think have helped our marriage remain strong and then kind of do a little bit of detail into each one of those. So that's kind of what we've got going on today. But first we should say by no means are we marriage experts. By no means is our marriage perfect. In fact, it's far from, but we are on 10 years and we've got some time under our belt. We've learned a lot about each other.
We're learning every day.
And if you didn't hear the episode number 2, where we share what we've learned in 10 years of marriage and just our joking pet peeves about each other and all the fun things, make sure to give that episode a listen as well, because it's humorous and we had a lot of fun making it and we've gotten really good feedback on that. Okay, I think the first and most important thing that we could share about today is that your fulfillment should not come from your spouse. It should come from the Lord.
That's right. Because if it comes from your spouse or anybody else, then you have no reason for the Lord, right?
Right. There's nothing John cannot fulfill all of my needs and desires. And if I'm seeking that in him, I am putting him in a terrible spot that he's going to fail at before he even starts. It's not fair to put those kinds of desires on your spouse. So if you're not already, you need to be making sure that you are finding your fulfillment by being in God's word and knowing that you're his child before anything else and that your marriage comes after that relationship with God. And then automatically that just takes some pressure off of each other, right?
Yeah.
Being something that you don't need to be and that you can't physically be.
Yeah, 100%. And it did take us a little bit of time to figure that out, because we always had this kind of expectation of what a marriage should be and what was on TV and what was in all the movies and stuff like that would bring you full joy. And we've realized that person on earth can't do that.
Right.
You know, God is the only one that can complete the 100% joy of it.
Right.
So that it did take a little bit of time to learn that.
You're bringing us to bullet point number 2 without even realizing it.
What?
You're so good.
Man, I'm good.
Number 2 is, what are your expectations in marriage? And you just kind of touched on this. Are you looking to seek something in a marriage that you read in a novel, that you saw on a romance movie, that, you know, you've seen in someone else's marriage that you wish was yours? Like, what expectations are you walking into marriage with? And are they acceptable? Are they unreasonable? You need to be real with yourself in what you're looking for and what you expect out of a spouse. Real life is messy and vulnerable and hard. And, you know, you have to remember that you're doing marriage together, and hard doesn't mean bad. We talked about that in our last episode about homeschool. Hard doesn't mean bad. It just means hard. And it's not a bad thing. And there's definitely ways that you can, you know, put expectations on your spouse, and it causes a breakdown in your marriage, because then they feel like they're not worthy enough. They're not meeting what you want, and they're not good enough. And that automatically just makes you feel like a failure before you've even started.
Yeah. And that comes from comparing, you know, and it could be just friends, relationships, which you might not know the whole 100% story of the relationship. So from the outside, it looks like, oh man, you know, that husband or that wife's doing this, and they have such a great marriage and things are perfect, or that person has it so easy because the other spouse is doing all the stuff for them. It might not be that way, right? So it's easy to look and compare other people's relationships and put that in your expectation of your spouse.
Right.
But there's other things behind the scenes that you're not seeing, right?
And when they say comparison is the thief of joy,
it is 100%.
it truly is. Stay in your own
Thanks,
lane.
Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, right. Keep your eyes on your own prize. Guard your heart. One of the next bullet point we want to kind of share is going into marriage with the idea that it's a committed marriage. Like, you are going into this with full-on commitment. I feel like that's kind of lost in today's society. It's not held as sacred as it used to be. And call me old school, call me whatever you want. I don't care. A marriage is meant to be for a man and a woman to be together forever. Like, it is not, there is no end point on that whatsoever. And so, you know, John and I going into marrying each other, when we were engaged, we talked about this. It was like, there's no room for the D word in our marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. We made a pact that we just would not say that. Not even joke around about it, because that's a serious word. So we didn't want that, and that's something we just decided that we weren't going to say it.
Right. It's a safe feeling too once you kind of lay down that rule and you both know that your heart is in that. It's a very safe feeling to be in your marriage and trust that it's forever, and that the D word isn't an option, so you can literally work through anything together and come out the other side stronger. Next is communication. And I have so much to say.
I think this is the hardest one with everybody. I mean, it really is. I mean, all couples, friendships, it's anything really, is communication is key to make sure everybody's on the same page. I mean, there's so many things that if we don't communicate together, that the devil can just use and dig in there and then just switch it up where the other person doesn't even know there's something going on in the back end. But in your mind, you made this small thing into a huge thing, which could have just been taken care of in 10 seconds by just talking.
Right.
Just communicating.
A talk about it.
Yeah. And I know that's happened with me before with you in the past, that I've just, I didn't communicate. And then it just was in my heart and in my mind for, a month or so. And then we just
and then I started to know something was wrong. And I was like, why are you being so weird? Just talk to me. And I'd have to literally pull things out of you.
And unfortunately, that's when people blow up.
Yes.
They hold it in for so long, they blow up, and then there's a big argument. So, we have been working harder on actually just communicating when something happens or we think something. We just go ahead and communicate it and just get it out there.
Right. I think it's important to remember that we can't read each other's minds. And I know I'm guilty of doing this. I don't know about other women listening, but I'm guilty of being like, why doesn't he just think to do XYZ because it should be prevalent. Like, it's obvious, just do it. And I don't have to be ticked about it in my mind, right? But that's an expectation on our spouse to read our minds and know what's bothering us. Like, how could I possibly think with all that John has going on that he's going to, remember to do something that I told him to do 4 weeks ago. And, now I'm harboring ill feelings and now it's getting all icky and I've got resentment. It's just like, why wouldn't I just say, hey, John, do you remember when I asked you to move, the trash can out of the garage? Would you mind doing that tonight? Oh, wow. Done. Crisis averted. It all comes down to communication. So much does in marriage. And listening, like watching my mother, and she knows that I'm talking about this today, and this is nothing wrong against her. Like, everybody lives through their mistakes. But as an adolescent, watching my mom go through her divorce, I saw the breakdown in communication. And I remember thinking, like, if they would just talk about it, they wouldn't have to get mad about it. And I was so young, but I remembered seeing it. And she learned from it. I learned from it. So it's nothing bad. It's just water under the bridge and lessons learned. But I remember seeing that from such a young age and being like, I want to do this differently. And now that I'm married, I see how it was difficult. Like, it was hard.
Yeah,
it's hard. Marriage is hard. But looking back at it, I'm like, I feel like I'm more intentional about it because I have like a trigger for it, just from my past. So yeah, just keeping an open communication with each other, talking about things, not holding in resentment for it. And also kind of along the same lines, this is more John than me. He can talk about this, but being careful with sarcasm. John and I are very sarcastic people. Just we like banter and joking around. You can tell that from previous episodes. But John definitely had to have a talk with me once upon a time about my sarcasm.
Yeah. As you know, Meg is a very independent woman, and, but I also like to, give my opinion on things, but a lot of times she would want to hear it at the very beginning. So
this is true.
I would maybe say something to her that she needs to do, or I'm a reactionary person and I like to fix things. So she's complaining about something in the very, very beginning. I would say, oh, well, let's just do this. We'll fix this. This is what you need to do. And what she would do is say, aye, Captain, and salute me. And that would make me so furious that she would do that.
I remember that. He would get so mad at me and I'm like, I'm just joking. He's like, it's just not funny. So can you stop? So I stopped.
Yeah, it took a little bit for you to stop, but you eventually stopped. And that was, but yeah, again, communicating, I'm sure at the very beginning, I probably didn't say much about it. And I just let it just burn inside me of how much I hated when you did that. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of probably just all kind of exploded. And then I actually let you know why. And I could have fixed that at the very beginning and just letting you know that I didn't like that.
Yep. Sorry for all the salutes. I get it. I'm pretty sure if one of the kids did that to me, I'd be ticked off too.
Actually, Emery did that the other day to me. I was like, hold up.
I saw her do it and I was like, ooh, Emery's going to get in trouble. Oh. Okay, next up, this is something that John and I used to do a lot together. We don't anymore, but for the first, I want to say like 7 or 8 years of our marriage, we prayed together every night when we got in bed. And the reason that we started doing that was because I actually had nightmares all the time. And it was awful. I would wake up in the middle of the night tortured by nightmares. And so the only way we were trying to figure out how to make them stop, and the only way we found that made them stop was if John prayed over us before bed and prayed for angels surrounding my dreams. And people are probably like, oh my gosh, that's so cheesy. But it's the only thing that worked for the spiritual warfare that was happening to me at night. And from that point, I never had another nightmare whenever he would pray. So I don't know when that, probably kids between, in the last few years having 4 kids.
Just tired.
Yeah, but you've got like a newborn in the bed. We've had kids in our room, bassinet, like
having to be quiet. I think that's probably kind of where it started, having to be quiet because you had a kid in the room that was sleeping. Mm-hmm. And then we just stopped doing it. And we actually talked about that this morning, that we need to start that back up.
I know. Yeah. I enjoyed it because it was kind of like a nice nightcap to our day, like right before we go to bed, setting our eyes on what's important and coming together as one. And but that is something that if you are looking for a way to connect with your spouse, praying together is always a fantastic option. The next one is going to make me blush. Sorry, Mom and Dad. But it's important to have a sex life in your marriage.
I'm pumped.
Shut up.
Let's talk about it.
Oh,
sorry, Mom.
We are not going to divulge into this in anything juicy or exciting, I promise. But there is importance in saying that a sex life should be prevalent in your marriage. God created it. He created it to be good. And you are one or two people coming together as one. And that is a very important aspect.
It is. Yeah, it definitely is. And
moving on to the next bullet point for us is to never stop dating each other. I feel like we're actually really good at this.
We are.
Because we act like, I don't know, we act like dating, like we're dating kids. You know how when you're dating, you're like, oh, I can't wait to hold his hand, or like, oh, I'm going to smack her booty, or things like that.
I never said that. I just do it, honey.
Okay, well, in my mind, like I'm thinking about that, but those are the things, like those little things add up, and they are a sense of love, like just a way of communicating love and desire between one another. And obviously we've had spells where we have not been, on top of that.
Yeah.
Like with kids, that was, rocking our world. Every time a newborn baby would come in, I'd be like, don't touch me, which is just reality. But those are just seasons, and those seasons pass. And as long as you get back to it and you remember, like, this is my best friend, I'm doing life with this person forever, I need to date them forever. So go and make sure that you're having weekly date nights.
Yeah, if you can do it. And then, it doesn't even have to be date nights. It can be date days. We found out.
Or date nights in. Like, it doesn't have to cost money.
Exactly. Date nights in. So I know it's hard with being parents and with kids and jobs and businesses and stuff like that. You get out of the loop sometimes. Mm-hmm. But it is super important to actually get those date nights or date ins, whatever, and try to get those weekly, because that's really where you can connect. And that's how you guys became, in love in the first place.
Right. John's really good about writing love notes, not like love letters, but
I don't know if they're love notes.
Yeah, like little like, hey babe, you're going to do great today, I love you so much, and leaving that sticky note on my coffee mug for when I wake up in the morning, or things like that. It's nothing like ooey gooey, overly emotional, but it shows me like I wake up and smile because I'm like, oh, he thought about me this morning before he left, I used to do stuff like that where I'd leave like a dry erase marker on the bathroom mirror, little things like that. You can just do things, step outside, like think outside the box every once in a while. Doesn't have to cost money, but just do things intentionally to date your spouse.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause like I said, life is busy, and a lot of times you forget about doing that, but you have to actually make that a priority in a marriage. You do. Or things will kind of find their way in, work their way in. And if you are dating each other, there's no room for that. Okay. The next one is to stop resenting your spouse. And I know we kind of touched on this a little bit already, talking about resentment, but I've been guilty in the past of harboring ill feelings of resentment over John without him even knowing about it. But it's because in my mind, I have this expectation or something that I'm thinking about that maybe he's not doing, but he has absolutely no idea. And then I'm harboring resentment over him and feeling these feelings of like, oh, you're not measuring up to what I'm wanting or something. And that's one, not fair. And two, I don't even give him the chance to know about it, therefore decide if it's something worth, doing differently. So if you feel like you're harboring resentment towards your spouse, you need to decide, is it something that I need to talk to them about? Like, is it even their problem to begin with, or is it me? And do I need to just let it go? Or is it something I need to bring to their attention? And then this is something we talk about and have communication over, and it can be fixed. And then the feelings are gone, everything's out in the open, and you move on past it. And if it's not important, if you're getting that from a certain person on Instagram or Facebook, it's time just to stop watching it. Right. Get your eyes off of that, and then you'll forget about it. Because if it's not important, why are you even thinking about it? Exactly. So stop watching. Okay, you didn't even realize it, but you just went into our next bullet point, which is talking about having boundaries in your marriage. And kind of like you just said with social media, one, you need to keep perspective. Like, nobody's life is perfect. Everybody is sharing the highlight reel on social media. People might look perfect from the outside, but you have to remember and keep perspective that there are other things happening on the other side of the camera, and there's mess in everybody's life. There's imperfection in everyone's life. So keeping a good perspective is very important. And then putting boundaries around that. If you're watching a particular family or person, whatever it might be, and you're starting to feel feelings of bitterness or resentment towards your spouse because they're not like the person that you're watching on social media,
stop following. Like, put up boundaries in your life and say, no, this is infiltrating my feelings towards my spouse, and that's not acceptable. That's how the devil works his way into people's lives and relationships. They think they see other things and they think the grass is greener somewhere else, when you really just need to work on your own, and put up a wall and say, no, I'm not letting this in.
And as far as boundaries, it also goes with, who are you talking to? If you're talking to them on social media, through text messages, we make sure that we don't talk to the opposite sex. And when owning a business, I always try to make sure that I'm not alone with the opposite sex. I know my buddy, Jonathan Yates, tries to not have lunch with opposite sex. We've always tried to do that because, one, if you're having a bad day or your husband did something silly and you're with the opposite sex, you're going to talk to him about it maybe. And then that just creates a really unhealthy relationship there. And you might see your friend out and they might see you with somebody else, and then it starts people talking. Right. So it's just when
it might have been so innocent from the beginning, but people perceived it one way and it was something else. It just leaves room for bad things.
Exactly.
Not that that's the goal going into it, but having that just gives opportunity for like, wait a minute.
Yeah. So that's one key thing that we try not to do, is to just not have those type of one-on-one relationships.
Right. Which is great because we have so many friends where we have friends of the opposite sex, but we also like love their spouse. So it's always like community aspects where it's like we get together as husband and wife and our kids, and we all get along, and we all have our group texts and things like that. So there's never like, we still get to hang out and talk to those people that we enjoy talking to, but it's always in a group environment or, with the other spouse involved. So there's just no room for question. And our last and final bullet point is that marriage is about give and take. There have been points in our marriage when I am down, like whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, all of the things. Lots of times after new babies were introduced into our lifestyle where I'm just exhausted, whatever. And John picks up the slack, and vice versa for him. There's times where the business has been having a really hard go and he's just emotionally spent and physically exhausted by the time he gets home. And that's for me to pick up the slack. It doesn't mean something's wrong that you're having to do 90% and they're doing 10%. It shouldn't be all the time like that, but it definitely has its, teetering of going back and forth where you have to understand, we're all human. We have our moments of weakness. You have to be the strength when your spouse is weak, and vice versa.
And life is busy. So you need to be aware of what's going on with your wife and how they're feeling and what's going on at the house with the kids. If 3 kids are sick, then your wife's probably having a hard day, or your husband's having a hard day taking care of them. So bring something nice home, bring their favorite snow caps. Meg loves snow caps from Earth Bear.
They're called non-parcels, which
non-parcels, whatever. They got snow on top of them. So I tell snow caps. If she's having a hard day, leave a little bit early if you can. I know if you work for somebody, it's kind of hard to do that, but if you can, do something special for them. Let them go out for the night for a couple of hours just to get out by themselves, or on the weekends. But you need to just be visual.
If anything, just send them a message and say, hey, I know today's hard. How are you doing? You hanging in there? Like that coming in at 3:00 after like a hard day or in the midst of a hard day automatically makes the person feel seen and like, okay, they know I'm struggling. We're going to get through this. Just little things. You just have to be mindful of reaching out to the other person and caring and wanting to invest in them.
And with that, being willing to listen. Yes. I like to fix things, so I have not been good at, and I am going to work on it.
No, you do a good job listening. Now. John and I have this conversation a lot. A lot of times, like I will unload on John, just like, oh my goodness, here's all the things like, I'm feeling, I'm overwhelmed. I'm got anxiety today. I'll unload. And John knows we either have I don't need you to fix this kind of conversation. I just need you to listen kind of conversation. And then sometimes they're like, I say, okay, this is one of those where you can give me feedback, like I need your help. But John knows there's a lot of times he had to learn that with compassion. I just needed to talk and unload sometimes. And I felt better automatically just for having someone to listen and not judge me for it. And then we move on. But John definitely is a fixer by nature. So that was something in the beginning that he used to always give me a solution. And I was like, I don't want your solution. I just want you to listen to me.
Yeah, that took a few years to realize that and learn that one.
But that was also me having to realize that you are just a fixer by nature. And it was your personality. So you were doing it with love. I just had to tell you that sometimes I didn't want to hear it.
Communication, right?
Oh, wow. Full circle.
It comes right back to that every time.
Full circle, babe.
Amazing.
All right. So hopefully these were some helpful, tangible tips that you can implement in your marriage if you are married and listening to this, or something that if you're not married and you're thinking about it and you're like, this is what I want in a future spouse. I want to be on the same page about these things, and you know what's important to you. And just hearing, from a couple that have been married for 10 years that definitely does not have it all together, still learning, still trying. But above all, we remember that our relationship is a gift from God, and it is held right under our relationship with God, before our children, before anything else. And as long as we keep that perspective, we'll be all right.
That's right.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode, and we can't wait to see you in the next one.
See you guys next time.
Thank you guys so much for listening. If you liked it, leave us a review. If you're following on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. On Instagram, follow us at The Modern Tulip, and we will see you guys in the next episode.